Now, if you think that this is simplistic, if you think that this is outdated, think twice. The most important tool for studying the Arab-Israeli conflict in the United States of America today, whether it is in high school or colleges or in the universities, is an atlas called the Atlas of the Arab-Israeli Conflict, which was written by one of Britain's leading professors called Martin Gilbert. I think it's already in its 12th edition. Right. And this is the main tool by which students in America, and until recently in England, more or less until I came over, but not because of me, or maybe because of me, I don't know, until recently also in England, was the main cartographic way of looking, or geographical way of looking at the conflict. And I think it tells you a lot of the Zionist propaganda today compared to the Zionist propaganda in the early days. Martin Gilbert's atlas has, as I say, is a professional tool that most academics in America use in order to understand the history of Palestine. Okay. The first map is Palestine during the biblical times, days of the Bible. The second map is Palestine during the Roman time, at the time that the Jews allegedly were expelled by the Romans. The third map is the Crusader. The fourth map is the first Zionist settlement in 1882, which means that between 70 AD, or between the time of Christ, till the late 19th century, nothing happened in Palestine, because it was empty, because there were no people. And this mindset is still there in Israel. This is Zionism for me. This is really Zionism for me, because Zionism is not saying there are no Arabs around. Of course the people know that there are Palestinians around. There are now, as Ali said today, half of the population of Manda, what used to be historical Palestine, today are Palestinians. So you don't deal with a Jewish community that doesn't know that Palestinians exist. But the whole effort is on two levels. One is to make the Palestinians evaporate, disappear, so they can go back to the land without people. Or, if you cannot do this, imagine that they are not there. Now, how can you imagine that they are not there? You can build a wall. Many people think wrongly that the wall is meant mainly to enclave the Palestinians. But this is the wall that you are familiar with, the apartheid wall, inside the West Bank and between the West Bank, is not the only wall in Israel. Most of the Jewish well-off communities in Israel that are near Palestinian villages have high walls, higher than the segregation wall. If you have a high wall, you are in a land without people, for the people without land. And this is the two ways that Zionism is operating. Now, what wrongly is called in Germany the Zionist left, or the peace camp in Israel, are the people who live in these gated communities. And they are really minimalists. They are minimalists. They want only a small part of Palestine, it's true, provided it's purely Jewish. This is Meretz. This is the Peace Now movement in Israel. This is probably the worst kind of Zionist manifestation of goodwill that we have. This is the idea, and I know these are my friends. I came from this milieu, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. This is the kind of people who are very nice, and they are really nice. You know them. You adore them in Germany. You give A, B, C, D, E, F, H, Yehoshua, and Amos Oz. You give them prizes, although they are horrible writers, but that's another issue. But you give them prizes like as if they have written the Bible, the Quran, and the New Testament together, and all these human creations are nothing compared to their amazing stories. Just watching the the Goethe Prize, I think, that, or the other ones that you are bestowing on these mediocre writers is one of the most embarrassing human ceremonies to watch. But nevertheless, that's a German problem, and that's your idea of culture after the Second World War. Sorry? Yeah, they love prices. So you have to deal with what is German culture today. It's another victim of, I think, the Holocaust and the Nazi era. I won't go into it without being too offensive about it. Now, this is very important to understand because, humanly speaking, this minimalist Zionist approach was within the Zionist movement from the very early period. Just give us a little piece of Palestine. And it sounded so convincing. We are willing, in 1936, this peace movement within Zionism said, 1/3 of Palestine, that's all we want. But of course, with no Arabs in it. And this didn't seem racist to anyone. It seemed like, these are amazing people. Look, all they want is 1/3. And then, and this is the inner logic of peace Zionists, or what I call diet Zionists. This is like Diet Coke. It's Zionism without the cocaine. The logic is, when I offered the Palestinian in the 30s 70%, and they said no, of course it doesn't stand to reason that I would offer them again only 70%. They have to learn a lesson, because they're Arabs, and they're a bit like children. So we have to be a bit didactic with them. Since they did not accept the 70%, we're now offering them 60%. But the Palestinian movement being an anti-colonialist movement, which is something difficult for Europeans to grasp because there are many Muslims among the Palestinians. And a Muslim anti-colonialist movement is not like Che Guevara and the people that people like here as anti-colonialists. They don't have these cigars and berets. And they shave, or if they don't shave, they have proper beards. So they don't fit well into this anti-colonialist image. You can't sort of put them on big posters, right? Imagine Yasser Arafat on a t-shirt like Che Guevara. It doesn't work. So people forget that actually they are an anti-colonialist movement. They are not different from any other movement that the left has cherished in many ways. And therefore, when this movement says rightly, 40% of our homeland is something a proper anti-colonialist movement cannot accept. Under any conditions, it cannot accept that 60% of its homeland would be in the hand of a colonialist movement.